so far by Sanjay Hegde, if you look at what he said today at least, is one about whether the government can actually go ahead and issue an order about uniforms. Second, he's saying that colleges don't have uniforms. It's a school phenomenon. It's not something that's followed in colleges. So that's another point he's making. He's claiming that he studied in the MGM College of Udupi and there were no uniforms there. He's saying the Karnataka Education Act, and at this point Sanjay Hegde is making a mention saying two steps of rules are there now. One is the Karnataka Educational Institutions Rules of 1995. He's saying in this, there's no mention of a uniform. He's also mentioning other rules where he again states that there's absolutely no mention of a uniform based on which the government can issue an order. This is in reference to last weekend when the government had come out with an order saying that as per the Karnataka Education Act, which has been drawn up based on the constitution, uniforms must be followed in educational institutes. Remember that posters of that government notice were also stuck at the outside the walls of every one of these educational institutes. They were seeing this kind of a showdown, and that led to further protests in parts of Karnataka as well. Legally speaking, right now the arguments are about the fact of whether this kind of a government order can hold or not. And that's an important point as well, Nabila, because the government, perhaps trying to stop this protest, had put out this kind of an order, and they had in fact cited the Karnataka Education Act. They said that this is a constitutional step. Now it's coming into the aspect of whether this is allowed, whether it's within the state government's jurisdiction or not. Has there been any response on this from the state government in the Karnataka High Court in the last 2 days?
Well, Akshita, it appears that the Karnataka government is now very keenly waiting and watching. They're trying to ensure that they go with what the High Court has to say. In fact, many questions put forth to the Karnataka government. Basaraj Bommai himself, the Chief Minister, has said this is uniformity that should be followed. It has been a rule over the years. Karnataka Government Act says uniformity inside classrooms. It may not have been followed in successive governments, but we will ensure that this is enforced. Now, for us to look at it as Karnataka government deciding to issue a fresh order only so that protests can be suppressed, I think this was a call that they took which may not have gone as per planned, Akshita, because clearly that backfired. And how we saw these girls breaking up support, the PFI, the SDPI, all of them jumping in, trying to push those girls to stand up for their right and say that this is mandatory in our religion and therefore you will not remove it, and also encourage them to petition in the High Court. So it appears that the Karnataka government's order in saying hijab is banned inside classrooms because of uniformity has only backfired and escalated, further help escalate the protests if not for stopping. It appears that it may have been a wrong call to decide on that so harsh, especially 2 months ahead of examinations.
If you've tuned in, the big news on India Today right now, it is day 3 of the hijab showdown hearing in the Karnataka High Court. Nabila Jamal, Nolan Pinto are on the ground telling us update one by one of what really is right now the arguments from both sides, specifically from Petitioner. And right now Nabila is also telling us how time is of essence. Just about 2 months to go for examination and academic year to go while the showdown is taking place. Nolan, now I want to come across to you. So what precisely are the arguments that is being presented from the petitioner side? Because primarily are they asking, where did this uniform protocol come from if it is not officially mentioned? That is what the petitioner is arguing now?
Well, Pooja, Advocate Hegde, who's representing the students from Udupi who actually filed the case over here, one of the first petitioners, he says that in 1983, that's the Karnataka Education Act, there is no provision for uniform. Now, we must remember that last Saturday, the Karnataka government invoked provisions, a government order from the Karnataka Education Act 1983. So Advocate Hegde says there's no provision for uniform, but he also says uniforms are a school phenomenon for students to be identified in case they get lost. When students went to college, they stepped out of uniform, and uniform in colleges came much later. He also says that there's another rule. He says that this is the Karnataka Educational Institutions Rules 1995. He goes on to be a little bit more detailed. He says that he refers to 11, that's point number 11. He says provision of uniform, books, etc. Those, according to me, were the rules intended for schools. So the Chief Justice of Karnataka asked him, so this provision of Rule 11 is not applicable to pre-university, and Advocate Hegde says, right, and the pre-university, it is 2006 rules and there is no provision for uniform. In fact, he says that there is no provisions, there is no penalty in case the uniform is not worn or improperly worn. There is no prescribed penalty. Even if a penalty is prescribed, he adds, Your Lordship, you will see if the absolute expulsion of keeping children away is disproportionate. So basically he's saying that there are two rules over here. The 1983 rule does not talk about uniforms. The 1995 rule talks about uniforms, but that is only for schools. This is what he says. And when you leave school and step into college, there is absolutely no uniform.
And where does the pre-university college then come, which is the 11-12 standard? Very interesting points coming in. Remember what has been mentioned officially, and can it be used to tell and deny these women education or come into their classes, or is this the mandate of the institution? While this hearing is on, Mustafa Sheikh is also on the ground. Mustafa, because you've been speaking to some of the students, you've been on the ground, what is the situation like? Are there still restrictions in place? Is there an eerie silence around? Because at this point, most of these students are not able to get back to their classes.
Well, yes, there is uncertainty in the minds of students because from 2-month PU exams are going to take place, and if till then the court does not reach a conclusion, or even if it reaches a conclusion and then the petitioner moves to a Supreme Court in appeal, it's something which will be a time-consuming exercise. Now remember that there were some colleges in Karnataka, in Udupi, where the hijab was allowed to be worn inside the classroom. But now, as you were saying about the uniform rules, this started when the protest at PU Girls College started. After that, the entire matter was referred to the department, and department came out with a uniform law, and due to that uniform law, even the colleges which were allowing girls to wear hijab, they also had to say that this is the new rule and we have to follow it, and hence you cannot wear the hijab in the classroom, and hence the protests, that's how it spread. And there are now the petition, one of the petition under Article 32 of the Constitution has also reached the Supreme Court. So there is no end in sight as of now. What we are getting to hear in the Karnataka High Court is just the initial arguments from the side of the girls, but there will be the government will be arguing, and then we'll have to wait and see what.
And I can see behind you, Mustafa, the shops are shut, no traffic really plying. So of course, while it appears normal, there is a lot of uncertainty on the ground. Nabila Jamal also has been tracking. Nabila, you've been speaking to students, you've been speaking to the administration of the pre-university college. So a lot of it right now are what they are saying and they are claiming on both sides. So how is that going to be the petitioner's argument in the court? Are they primarily going with if there is any official mention that can be used to tell these girls hijab cannot be permitted, because the school or the college is saying they came wearing the headscarf recently, while the girls are saying we've always worn it? How is it then playing out from the street to the court?
Right, Pooja, it's for the court to decide now based on their deliberations. But I'm going to tell you what I sense from on ground. First of all, there isn't a written order that says hijab is banned. So this is a direct assumption when we speak of rules and norms that need to be followed. There is no written order that has come from the Karnataka Udupi Government College here that says that hijab will not be allowed. It only says you've got to maintain uniformity. Uniform is a must inside classrooms. Does not speak about hijab, does not speak about a turban, does not speak about any of that. Those finer details, it's now for the court to decide on what's allowed, what's not, and what's part of uniform. What clarity we really need now, I think, for the country extensively is what do you constitute of a uniform? What can be part of a uniform apart from your uniform, which is the piece of cloth which the college has approved, a certain color, a certain uniform where all students have to wear the same. Apart from that, you have in colleges and schools across, colleges that have the uniform rule and schools mostly across, where so long in India we've seen girls who are followers who have been wearing the same color scarf that matches the uniform. You've seen boys who are wearing turbans, usually matching the turban color with their uniform, if not for a white color. So what constitutes of uniformity? That's the question that the court now needs to really make clear, because we're seeing this widespread ramifications. The hijab ban here has really echoed and resonated with people across, especially the believing Muslim women, right? You have across India who are now condemning this, saying that this is awful, and again liking to make a mention here about the Kerala High Court, where it banned for hijab inside a minority institution. That particular order was based on a petition that was filed to allow the hijab inside a minority Christian institution. That's when the court there said that inside a minority institution you cannot impose your religious symbol, because that is a minority institution. They have set their rules, and under the constitution, a minority institution has the provision to set their own rules. Even in Mumbai, a quick word, Mumbai High Court has also taken up this issue, but that also was a specific case when it spoke about hijab worn inside examination halls, which the court said is not allowed because it will interrupt.
And could some of these earlier mentions and what the court had said could be brought in today as well? Yeah. But very interesting today, right now. Nolan, across to you now. What is the big news? Because for now, viewers who are tuning in, this is, remember, third day. Time is running out for a lot of students who are not being permitted back into the classes. Administration is saying there was suddenly activism out of nowhere in the past few days. They are alleging vested interests and politics in it. What is the court right now hearing, and on what matter? How is the government continuing to defend the restriction of the headscarf or the full body veil? And what is the petitioner saying needs to be done? The penalty issue that is coming here with regard to the uniform. Can we talk more about that now?
Well, Pooja, as of now, the Advocate General is yet to make his arguments. The statements are being made by Advocate Sanjay Hegde, who's representing the students from Udupi, who initially were one of the first petitioners to file the case in the Karnataka High Court. The issue is between the Karnataka Education Act 1983, a government order that was notified by the Karnataka government last Saturday, which banned students wearing a hijab inside, not just a hijab, but also saffron shawls. The government's contention is this, that if anyone wants to enter a classroom, it's not about religion over there. Religion is in your home. You can practice your religion at home or outside. But when you enter a classroom, it's all about uniformity and discipline. And discipline is what the education minister has been stating right from the beginning. It's not about religion. The government is not against anyone's religion. You can do whatever you want in the class. Everyone is equal. So Advocate Hegde basically has been saying that there is a difference between two laws. That is the Karnataka Education Act 1983. He says that, which talks about no uniform per se. And he also talks about the 1995 rules. That is the Karnataka Educational Institutions Rules 1995. He also goes on to state that in schools, yes, it makes sense to wear a uniform. In case a student gets lost, you can find. But once you step out of school, there is no concept of uniform. And the uniform idea for uniform came in late. But Pooja, I also want to make a point over here. Many degree colleges, many pre-university colleges in Karnataka initially did not have uniforms. He's right. But later on, uniforms did come about. And that is what the government is saying, that we have nothing to do with this. This is the government. Before I go back to what the advocate stated, the government says that we have nothing to do with this. We have what is the CDC, the College Development Committee. They will look into the uniforms and everyone has to abide by that. Now, what is happening over here, they're talking about the penalty. He says that under the Karnataka Education Act 1983, penalties prescribed are largely for college management and they are largely in the nature of fines. He also adds, I've prepared a written submission on the principles of administrative law, leaving out the constitutional issues. Now, Advocate Kamath, who is representing the Kundapur students, he has stated, would your lordship hear us on the interim arrangement? The urgency is this. The students are outside the college. Exams are to be held in the month of March. In fact, they've been seeking an interim relief from yesterday. In fact, when they asked Justice Dixit, he said that once the larger court is actually formed, the Chief Justice will take a call. And that is what Advocate Kamath is now asking for, or seeking an interim relief for the students immediately.